All right, we are coming in the home stretch here, ladies and gentlemen. Monday is the last day that we'll be meeting before turnaround anyway, and I have strong doubts that the Senate has been nearly as industrious as we have been here in our committee, so I think that maybe we're getting to see light at the end of the tunnel here. Now, first item up for bid is HB 2245. Want to work these two bills that we heard on Monday prior to the snowmageddon that we all had to deal with, and I'm sorry that you're all, one moment. That's exactly right. You're exactly right. Very good. Let's start off with 2245, however, because that's the number I said first. So if you could remind us, Eileen, of what 2245 did?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. House Bill 2245 was the bill that would move the State Employee Health Plan from the Department of Administration into the Kansas Insurance Department. And this is the bill also that I had requested a technical on as well.
Very good. And actually, let's entertain a motion for Representative Neighbor, Ranking Member Neighbor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move that we pass out House Bill 2245 for the purpose of discussion at this point.
All right, we have a second. Second by Representative Penn. All right, Eileen, there is a technical amendment to be passed out. If you could go ahead and do that, that would be fantastic.
Her shoes are coming off.
Well, we're often barefoot in this committee anyway. Okay. What is it with the?
It's Valentine's Day.
You got red in your shirt.
Did your wife dress you?
Maybe. I don't see colors.
Either of my sons, but there are glasses.
I've heard that.
I bought them each a pair, and they work.
I don't know. All right, Eileen, if you could explain your technical amendment. I see a lot of references to statute here. Is that really what we're dealing with predominantly?
Yes, kind of. Thank you, Mr. Chair. The technical amendment was to correct the title and repealer. For some reason, Kalis really hated me when I was drafting this bill and decided, this is the second time it happened, it was going to just drop a number of statutes out of the title and out of the repealer. And unfortunately, at that point that I okayed it to go, I was delirious or just plain stupid, and I missed the fact that we needed to have those added back in. So this is the technical that would add it back in.
I would never say stupid, delirious, inebriated, any of those things I would possibly believe. All right, now I also noticed that the change that I requested is included in this body. If you'll look on the second page here where it says July 1, 2027. That was my addition, and the purpose of it was to kind of smooth things between various administrations so that we didn't have chaos going on more than once. So we'll just have one big bout of chaos rather than two smaller bouts of chaos. But that's the thought process behind that discussion regarding the amendment. Yes, Representative Neighbor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Obviously, with those changes, it really does a nice cleanup on this bill. And I think the time that we're taking to get the name change, the stationary cards and all of that is appropriate with the July 1st, 2027. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would move the amendment.
For the motion, do I have a second? Representative James jumped in there with a verbal. Yeah, there we go. All right. Further discussion on the amendment. All right, seeing none, all those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Very good, we're back on the bill. Representative Neighbor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Without further ado, I would like to move that we pass out 2245 as amended favorably for passage.
All right, you've heard the motion. Is there a second? Second by Representative Essex this time. By the way, we have a special guest appearance here by Representative Essex as the vice chair tonight. Mr. Representative Bergkamp decided it was far more important to be at home. No, he had something. He had a thing. I don't know what it was exactly, but there we go. All right. Is there further discussion on HB 2245? Yes, Representative Miller.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I do appreciate all the work that you've put into this, and Eileen and everyone, even when on her sick deathbed, still testifying in committee.
Dragged herself to the camera.
The work never ends. What say you, sir, to the what say you about the implications of a conflict of interest having the same organization both administering and regulating the same thing?
That's
my constituents.
Yeah, no, that's, and I think that's a valid question. I would not necessarily say that the regulatory aspect of the insurance department, I don't believe really comes into play, however, with this. The main purpose that I wanted it moved into the insurance department was for handling customer service issues for the customers, i.e. state employees who are covered by this plan. I don't think that industry-wide regulation is going to adversely or even directly affect the state employee health plan in and of itself. But I mean, it is a valid question, absolutely.
I do appreciate the response to that, and I assumed you had already addressed that, as you know, that I wasn't the first person to.
In my head, I have, and that doesn't mean I said it out loud.
Thank you.
Right. Further discussion, committee. Seeing none, all those in favor of passing out HB 2245 as amended, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Very good. HB 2245 is passed out. Let's turn our attention to HB 2246. Eileen, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. House Bill 2246 was the bill that would enact the Consumer Protection Related to Hospital Price Transparency Act.
All right, and I'll also fill you in that we also have an amendment on this one as well. If you could pass that one out. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, I don't. We both requested the same amendment. So actually, this is not mine, and I apologize. Representative Wagner.
You can take all the credit you want, Mr. Chairman, but yes, there is an amendment, and I can explain this. It's just basically on this bill, Section 4, I think, was the part that gave everybody heartburn on this. Both myself and the chairman actually requested the same amendment. So this would be keeping House Bill 2246, but without Section 4, which is the part which allows like a personal cause of action, civil action between a patient and the hospital. I know from just the hospital feedback that I got that this was really the part that bothered them, that they were most concerned about. So I think it would make the bill better, and I would hope you'd act favorably.
And I'll chime in on that one as well. I'm not sure that I share the same concerns, because in my mind, this cause of action is not new. The only thing that swayed me in my mind was the fact that in some bizarre world where the federal transparency law or policy was no longer in place, then this would be a cause of action created by the state. And that's the only reason that I'm taking it out, well, no, you're taking it out, but that I agreed that that needed to be done. That was to keep that from, since that's not the intent of our bill, I have no problem with removing that. However, if the federal law ever changes and transparency is no longer an issue for the federal government, I don't see that happening. That would be a very bizarre move. But if it ever did, I might very well recommend this law at that time to put in place that action. But as it stands, I agree with you. It's not necessary for this bill, for the transparency that we're hoping to achieve, and so I will be supporting this amendment. In fact, seeing as how I was not, I'll entertain a motion on the amendment first off. Yes, Representative Wagoner made that motion, I assume.
Sorry, I would put my amendment on the table for positive action.
All right. Second by Representative Bergquist? Or was that a? Oh, sorry. Did we ever open up the bill to begin? No. We can make that motion here in a minute, though, once we decide whether we're amending it or not. All right. Second by Representative Bergquist. Discussion on the Wagoner amendment. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay.
No.
Oh. Well, okay. I like that. That's more in favor with me? Good, okay, very good. We have 2 no's. Where did you come from? All right. Now, Representative Neighbor. Yeah, yes, that did pass.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the discussion that we had last week, one of the people that testified who works closely with our hospitals on maintaining these services and really expressed, she knew right off the bat where these hospitals were that were brought up. There was a conversation before that, though, that said we were not complying with, and that we were not, there were no notes and letters sent, and yet we had others mention that, yes, they had received a notice. We had one hospital in particular that said they had reviewed, they had answered that review, and that was by the feds, and we were told the feds were doing this. Now, I have a problem with the fact that it does not appear that we have a problem, because in the testimony it came out that there was rationale. Some of them were updating. Others were making some changes, and you have to take the system down to make those changes to bring them back up, but that they had let certain individuals know. So I don't see a need for this bill. I don't see it causing anything but frustration for hospitals and those that are actively pursuing this. And so I cannot support this bill. Thank you.
All right, very good. Yes, Representative Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to echo what Representative Neighbor just said. And also, I want to add on top of that, the fiscal note. To me, it seems like we're going to be spending money doing something that the federal government's doing already. And I just don't see any need for this bill.
Very good. Representative Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I just wanted to note in the bill, it says that in section 2, it says on number 1, it says a list of the hospital's top 300, plain language description, consumer-friendly format. We actually pretty much identified that that is not fully, the hospitals aren't fully compliant with that. And so I think that there were some really good explanations and requests, bringing other people to the table. I think there's some confusion about the tool, using the tool versus the transparency link that's on there. And so maybe there's just this disconnect in what's required federally and what is actually being provided, what's the consumers and what's somebody else's. So, Mr. Chair, I would love it for you if you would, at some point, request an interim where we look at the tools, where we look at how it's being provided and given to the consumer. Is it meeting the federal objectives or this particular objective? And bring the stakeholders to the table, because it was mentioned, let's have the insurance companies there, the healthcare providers there, the consumers there, because ultimately I would like consumers to have the best available access and to know they have access. And I don't think that we're quite there yet.
Representative Neighbor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like also to see an interim because there are different hospitals out there. We have specialty hospitals, we have our large community hospitals, we have our rural, we have our critical care. And what does this apply to? Are there hospitals that are not required to have this information? And because of where they fall in the system. So I would be all for an interim, but I think this is too soon because we don't have that separation and that knowledge yet to invest in this until we have more information. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Williams, then Miller.
Sure, and just really quick, I did just look up what we have in here that defines hospital, KSA 65-450, and it says a general hospital or a special hospital license under, and then it gives those.
Right, Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So when we were hearing about this bill, a few of us representatives decided to just kind of do a little bit of internet searching to try to find how easy was it for us to look it up. I did find that I had some struggles on my state laptop because of the format or whatever the case. The downloadable spreadsheet format was not compatible. Turns out that it was just specifically the IT restrictions placed on the state laptop. I was able to pull it up easily at home, a lot easier than it was to pull up on my state laptop. So that helped me feel a little bit better about it. However, I feel like I'm not going to be the only person who would run into that. So my main concern is just to make it as easy as possible, like everyone else, to get a hold of the information, easily. So thank you.
Representative Neighbor for a third bite of the apple. It's a big apple.
The other thing was the person that spoke that day was very willing to show us what we needed to do to research, and that was denied. And I think because it doesn't meet with our state computers unless that's yours and not a state computer, there may be a format that we need to look at on ours. But when you look at people at home, like you said, those computers may be more adaptable to getting that information, and we may need to look at the block that's on ours, because if they're willing to show us and can show us, then we are better adept at explaining to our consumers how to get into these systems. If it's a computer problem, it's IT. It has nothing to do with the hospitals not being compliant. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Representative Haskins.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just, it seems like we've discussed this enough, but I want to just add my support to an interim hearing because we had several opponents, but we didn't have any proponents on record other than the carrier yourself talking about the purpose of this. And I always like to have a little bit more on both sides before I make a decision. So I would encourage us to have a hearing to maybe table this until we get more information. So I have a good feeling of why this is really required, because we got a heavy opposition to it, and I just would like a little bit more substance before I can support it.
Very good. I find it very interesting that we have opposition to something that's already existing law. Yes, Representative Penn.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted to question the colleagues as far as what I just heard, that they want to send this back to an interim committee and spend more taxpayers' dollars when we've had the opportunity to hear it and everyone has this posted. They can come and appear here before this committee and bring any opposition that they have to it, but they chose not to. But we want to prolong a decision that we've duly vetted, heard out. And my question is, should it go to interim committee? Will you support it when it comes out of interim committee? Because I doubt that's going to be the case.
Representative Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but kind of piling on what the representative from Wichita just said, didn't we hear a very similar bill last year?
We did.
Yes, so how much longer are we going to talk about this before we fix the problem?
Representative Williams.
All right, thank you. And my request or recommendation for interim has nothing to do with whether we pass this out or not, yeah. And in addition, even if we do pass it out, it doesn't mean that, since it's already federal law, it doesn't mean all these things actually are accomplished or that we all understand how they should be accomplished, because we may be thinking of it in different ways. And I want to be respectful of the hospitals that are maybe being compliant on one hand, but it's not necessarily easy for us to, to get a hold of the information. So that's why I think that they're not mutually exclusive, and I think there are a lot of questions on how can we make this better, and if we're really interested in making it fully transparent, I think that would be a great interim. So I do stand by that, even though I'm not trying to hold back the bill.
Haskins first and then Wagner.
And thank you,
Representatives Haskins and then Representative Wagner.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to clarify that working this bill, there were no proponents other than the carrier. There were several opponents. And so I was requesting to have more information on the proponent side before we make a decision. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Representative Wagner.
When we had a much fuller hearing a year ago when the thing first came up, and I know we had some specific proponents came in and testified. So it's not like this is just a minor sort of issue. It is something that comes up. I certainly think it's well-intentioned. I will say, I have talked to the opponents. I very much listen. Again, a year ago, I was on the House floor as an opponent to this bill, and the gist of the critique was that, this cause of civil action in Section 4, and that's what the hospitals can see causing them a lot of extra costs, a lot of extra headaches. The part that remains with having the Attorney General, and again, I'm going on memory here from when I did my research a year ago, was that in the federal statute, the ways, besides just the normal thing that the federal government does regulatory, because they, there are like 134 critical access hospitals, plus or minus, in Kansas. So there's only that many to go through. The ruling, or the initial federal rule, just started in '22, and so as far as like the compliance audits that the federal government has been doing have been ramping up over time. My memory was from a year ago that like 22 hospitals had been through it and had been officially certified that they were meeting the federal requirements. But what this bill does is very much amplify the federal law, which did have, it was, they're regular regulatory, but they did take consumer complaints and complaints from like state governments or from intermediary officials. And so really, this is very much, I would argue, as it's stated now, it has eliminated the complaints or the problems that, or the bulk of the problems that were brought up by the hospitals, but it does give us a seriousness to it, that we do have the Attorney General office officially on the case to make sure that the hospitals that are being recalcitrant or whatever, they have an extra sort of thing that is out there. But again, it's not a lawsuit. It's just, a regulatory body from the state, as it would be. And so I think this bill, as it stands, I think it is actually very good.
All right. Further discussion? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion. It has not been opened as amended yet. Representative Penn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we pass out favorably House Bill 2246 as amended.
All right. Is there a second? Representative Wagner. All right. I think we've beat discussion into submission here. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay.
No.
All right, the ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it.
I want to be listed as a no.
All right. Representative Neighbor would like to be listed as would like to have a no vote recorded, as well as Representative Haskins. Very good. All right. Committee, let's turn our attention to HB 2128, which I had forgotten all about. Thank you, Eileen, for calling my attention to it. In fact, while we're at it, could you also explain to me what that bill did?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. House Bill 2128 is the bill that the Insurance Department is sitting in the audience going, thank you for remembering this bill. It is the bill that would authorize the Commissioner of Insurance to select and announce the version of certain instructions, calculations, and documents in effect for the upcoming year. It would also add certain provisions from the NAIC Model Act relating to group capital calculations and liquidity stress testing to the Insurance Holding Company Act. And as you recall, it was a pretty technical bill.
Thank you for that. Yeah, this one, committee, as you'll recall, is the reason that we won't have to pass out the NAIC date change bill every year. This one is actually moving the ball forward, folks. I'm excited about that. Can't believe that I forgot about it. This is one of the more exciting pieces of legislation that we've got for the year. Wait, we have an amendment as well? All right. Yeah, I know. She is the most productive flu sufferer in the history of mankind. All right, Eileen, if you could explain, well, I mean, I guess this isn't huge, but go ahead and explain what you got there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This was an amendment that was requested by the department. Apparently, on page 14 of the bill in line 32, that material that is stricken needs to be unstricken for reasons that are passing my understanding, but apparently they're very important reasons.
Oh, well, okay. Committee, is there a discussion on this rather in-depth amendment? Yes, Representative Neighbor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move that we pass out House Bill 2128 favorably as amended, and after all the years I've been on this committee and have tried to explain why it was a year past that we were updating to the year past, this is a nice change. I am going to miss it. In fact, I wondered where it was this year, and here it came. So, thank you.
I think we're all going to be just a little bit sad, but that's okay. We'll find something to fill our hearts with joy on following years. All right, so first off, let's open up HB 2128. Representative Wagner, Representative Neighbor. I was sending a text to Paul.
He was playing on his phone. He shouldn't have done that.
Probably.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move that we pass out House Bill 2128 for the purposes of discussion.
All right, second by Representative Essex. Now let's discuss the amendment. I would entertain a motion to accept the amendment. Representative Neighbor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got ahead of myself just expressing how thrilled I was on the change of date, and I would move that we pass out the amendment for 2128 favorably.
All right, I have a second. Seconded by Representative Essex. Guest appearance, throwing out the seconds awfully fast. That's awesome. All right, discussion on the unstriking material amendment. Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. All right, back on HB 2128. Is there any discussion other than sadness at not having to update the dates? All right, very good. All those in favor of HB 2128 as amended, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Very good. Committee, we've caught up with everything that we had left open in the past. Excellent work. Now, let's turn to some new stuff that we can get put away by Monday, hopefully. HB 2333. Eileen, take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, committee. House Bill 2333 is the reason why you've heard our chair correct Eric from the Kansas Insurance Department so many times about where he's coming from. This is the bill that would rename the Kansas Insurance Department the Kansas Department of Insurance. It would also rename the Office of the Securities Commissioner of Kansas to be the Department of Insurance, Securities Division. And the Securities Commissioner's title would change to the Department of Insurance Assistant Commissioner, Securities Division. This bill would also eliminate the requirement that the Senate confirm Department of Insurance Assistant Commissioner Securities Division appointees. So House Bill 2333, as I said, renames the Kansas Insurance Department as the Department of Insurance. Section 1 transfers and imposes all powers, duties, and functions of the Kansas Insurance Department upon the Kansas Department of Insurance. The section also states that whenever the Kansas Insurance Department or words of like effect are used in statutes, contracts, or other documents, they shall be deemed to apply to the Kansas Department of Insurance. And the section stipulates that all rules and regulations, orders, and directives of the Commissioner of Insurance of the Kansas Insurance Department that are in effect as of July 1st of this year shall continue to be effective and shall be deemed to be rules and regulations, orders, and directives of the Commissioner of Insurance of the Kansas Department of Insurance. Section 2 renames the Office of the Securities Commissioner of Kansas as the Department of Insurance Securities Division and the Securities Commissioner of Kansas as the Department of Insurance Assistant Commissioner Securities Division. As in Section 1, this section stipulates that whenever the Office of the Securities Commissioner of Kansas or words of like effect are used in statutes, contracts, or other documents, they shall be deemed to refer to the Department of Insurance Securities Division. Also stipulating that whenever the Securities Commissioner of Kansas or words of like effect are used in statutes, contracts, or other documents, they shall be deemed to refer to the Department of Insurance Assistant Commissioner Securities Division. Lastly, all rules and regulations, orders, and directives of the Securities Commissioner of Kansas shall be deemed to be the rules and regulations, orders, and directives of the of the Department of Insurance Assistant Commissioner Securities Division. Section 3 amends KSA 40-102, which is the creation statute for the Kansas Insurance Department. And the amendment to this section simply changes the creation of the Kansas Insurance Department to the creation of the Kansas Department of Insurance and makes corresponding amendments as needed throughout the statute. Section 4 amends KSA 75-6301, which is the creation statute for the Office of the Securities Commissioner of Kansas. And here the amendment changes the creation of the Office of Securities Commissioner of Kansas that is administered by the Securities Commissioner of Kansas to the Department of Insurance Securities Division that is administered by the Department of Insurance Assistant Commissioner Securities Division. This section also makes the corresponding amendments throughout the statute. Finally, though, the amendment to subsection A removes the requirement that a person appointed as Department of Insurance Assistant Commissioner Securities Division be confirmed by the Senate before taking office. And with that, Mr. Chair, I can stand for questions.
All right, thank you, Eileen. I think that was
It was harder to explain.
that was a lot. All right. Now, that last part that you said, though, I wanted to, the appointment of the Securities Commissioner. Say that again for me, would you?
So currently, by law, the Securities Commissioner, any appointee for that position has to be confirmed by the Senate. This would remove that requirement.
Well, sounds like the Senate will hate that. I'm a fan. All right. Questions for the reviser? Seeing none? All right. Thank you, Eileen. All right. I have one person listed as proponent testimony, and that's Stephen, I'm sorry, Carr? Okay. Now, here on the agenda, however, it says you're with the Department of Insurance. Are you going to explain why, first off, you like KDOI better than KID?
Well, I would say I like KDOI, kind of like FBI or KBI, you know, so that it'll be letter-driven, not phonetically driven.
Gotcha.
Thank you, Chairman, and committee members. My name is Stephen Carr. I'm General Counsel for the Department of Insurance, and I appreciate you allowing me to testify on House Bill 2333. First, I want to give a thank you to Eileen. She was wonderful in helping us on this bill, making sure that it was as simple as possible and frankly short so that we didn't have to bring in reams of paper for you. The main purpose of this bill is really uniformity and also to kind of complete what the legislature already began back in 2017. So the uniformity piece of this is that in statute, there are references, and certainly it is established as the insurance department, but there's also references in statute to the Department of Insurance. So it's said both ways. This will make it uniform that it is Department of Insurance throughout. It'll also make us uniform with the majority of states that have a standalone agency handling the regulation of insurance. Most states that, and not all states have a standalone agency handling insurance. A lot have divisions of another agency, but the ones that do, the majority are called departments of insurance. And there's several in the Midwest: Nebraska, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, Michigan, for instance. And so this will help us make that uniform with them as well, which helps because the Department of Insurance not only interacts with individuals and companies from the state of Kansas, but we also interact with individuals from other states. And so the more uniformity you can have, it makes it more available to them finding us and understanding what exactly we do. The second piece of this really is the fulfillment of what was began in 2017. And it's simply basically cleans up the statute to really say what occurred in 2017. That is when the legislature put the Office of Securities Commissioner underneath the insurance commissioner. We are housed now within the same building. We share staff, all of those things. And this basically reflects that and establishes that going forward. And it also represents the structure that exists within the office. And so both of these things help in uniformity and also clarity as to how things are carried out by the Department of Insurance. And then the final thing, as Eileen pointed out, is simply removing the Senate confirmation. And I can speak to that if anyone has questions, but fairly straightforward. And I'd be willing to stand for any questions.
All right. Committee, yes, Representative James.
Go ahead and tell me your thoughts on the Senate. Why you didn't want to confirm it, want them to confirm it?
Why we want to remove that?
Right.
Sure. Partly because ultimately the person who stands for the decisions that make that in terms of like the person who hires the securities commissioner, the staff of the securities that handle the securities cases, that's ultimately the elected official here being the commissioner of insurance. And again, this is one agency all within the same building. There are instances where, for instance, the director of the KBI is Senate confirmed. However, those are two, and serves at the pleasure of the Office of the Attorney General. But in that instance, there's two separate agencies, two separate buildings. In fact, there's multiple buildings, for instance, for the KBI. They have separate HR staff. They have separate billing, things like that. And so it's understandable why that might require Senate confirmation. That's not the case here. This would be more akin to saying like Senate confirmation for the Chief Deputy Attorney General, which of course we don't have because they serve directly underneath the Attorney General. And that's really what is going on here with the Department of Insurance.
Committee, further questions for the lone proponent? We got to make them count. This is what you got. All right, seeing none, I think they let you off a little easier.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. All right, I have no one else listed as a proponent for HB 2333. Is there anyone who would care to speak as a proponent for HB 2333? Seeing none, I'll close proponent testimony, open neutral testimony. I have no one listed. Would anyone care to speak as a strongly neutral opponent or neutral testifier of 2333? Nope. I thought maybe you were coming in to testify, so here we go. All right, I'll close neutral testimony. I have no one listed as an opponent either for changing the name of the Kansas Insurance Department. I'm shocked. Nonetheless, would anyone care to speak as an opponent? Seeing none, I'll close opponent testimony and the hearing on HB 2333. Let's open up HB 2334 and act. This is going to be an interesting one. Eileen, take it away and explain this to us as clearly as possible.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. House Bill 2334 updates certain terms, conditions, and definitions to the Captive Insurance Act and also provides for provisional certificates of authority, incorporated cell insurance companies, and protected cell captive insurance companies. Section 1 through 10 of the bill enact the Kansas Protected Cell Captive Insurance Company Act, which would be all new and is largely based on the NAIC Model Protected Cell Captive Act. So Section 1 of the bill provides the name and citation to the act. Section 2 states that one or more sponsors may form a protected cell captive insurance company. I'm not, from here on out, I'm going to say protected cell captive because that's just too many words that I can mess up. In the act that pertains to the protected cell captives, This section also stipulates that a protected cell captive insurance company must incorporate as a mutual corporation, as a nonprofit corporation, or as an LLC. Section 3 provides the definitions for the act. Section 4 lists the materials that must be provided to the commissioner as part of the application to become a protected cell captive. Section 5 describes the different requirements that must be satisfied in order to form a protected cell captive insurance company and the properties and requirements associated with a protected cell captive. Most importantly, only an incorporated cell creates a legal person separate from the protected cell itself. Section 6 defines who can participate in a protected cell captive. While a wide range of entities can participate in a protected cell captive, participants are generally limited to only insuring their own risks unless granted permission by the commissioner. Section 7 describes the financial management of protected cell captives. Although cells can combine assets for investment purposes, they must be accounted for separately, and the commissioner may approve alternative methods for valuing cell assets. Section 8 requires that, except as otherwise provided, the Insurer's Supervision, Rehabilitation, and Liquidation Act applies to protected cell captives. No assets of a protected cell can be used to pay the expenses or claims other than those attributable to itself, and a protected cell captive's capital and surplus shall be available at all times to pay any expenses or claims against that entity. Section 9 describes the legal standing and liability of protected cells within a captive insurance company. Section 10 describes how a protected cell within a captive insurance company can be converted into another type of captive insurance entity and vice versa. Stop laughing. Section 11 amends KSA 40-4302 pertaining to the risks that a captive insurance company may insure, requirements for doing business, examination, registration fees, and certificates of authority. Amendments to this section add that a pure captive insurance company shall not insure a combination of risks of its parents and unaffiliated companies and controlled unaffiliated businesses, and provides that a pure captive insurance company may provide workers' compensation insurance, insurance in the nature of workers' compensation insurance, and the reinsurance of such policies, excess and stop-loss accident and health insurance as well. Section 11 also grants the commissioner the authority to implement a provisional certificate of authority and lowers the examination and registration fees from $10,000 to $2,500. Section 12 amends KSA 40-4304 pertaining to capital requirements of captive insurance companies. And the amendment here adds that a protected cell captive shall maintain unimpaired paid-in capital and surplus of not less than $100,000. Section 13 amends KSA 40-4308 pertaining to the frequency of the examinations of captive insurance companies. The amendment here changes the frequency from once every 3 years to once every 5 years. Section 14 amends KSA 40-4312 to state that no captive insurance company shall be required to join a rating organization or a policy form organization. And finally, Section 15 amends KSA 40-4314 pertaining to the taxation of captive insurance companies. And the amendment to this section simply adds a statement that the taxes provided by this section constitute all the taxes collectible under the laws of Kansas from any captive insurance company. And with that, Mr. Chair, I can pretend to stand for questions.
You do the she sells seashells thing now?
Not well. Not well at all.
All right, that was very impressive. Committee, a couple of things here. First off, if you have specific questions regarding for the revisor, obviously we will want to ask those. But if you have questions regarding what is it she's talking about, I think the proponents are going to be a little bit more helpful for you. Insurance isn't usually a real complicated subject, but there's really complicated language surrounding it. So I think the proponents will translate this into English into something that is a little bit more palatable for you and adjustable. But this one is actually, this is a big one that we're dealing with here. And this can do really cool things for Kansas and for businesses within Kansas. So pay strict attention to this. So we do a lot of rats and cats in here, and that's true, but this is a big one. This can do some stuff.
Like a hyena.
Yeah, when otherwise rats and cats, this is a hyena. All right, this is a good one. All right, it's kind of ugly but effective. All right, committee questions for the reviser specifically. Seeing none, all right. I think you got off lucky on that one, I think.
The way I wanted.
All right. To get this ball rolling, first proponent that I have listed is none other than Representative Chairman Tarwater. Take it away.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Would you like me to?
Well, I think they want to see you from that view, but
They want to look at my backside over there?
you can certainly testify from here if you like.
All right, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for entertaining this bill today. And Ranking Member Neighbor, thank you for your time too, and the members of the committee. I really want to thank Eileen for working on this. She spent hours and hours drafting this bill, and then it disappeared in the system, and she had to start over. Yet she still got it done in time for us to hear it on the last day of the session before turnaround, that we could hear a bill. And I really appreciate all your time and efforts. Thank you very much. For those of you wondering what a captive insurance company is, it's a real insurance company that is formed by a company to insure itself. It's pretty much that simple, and it is regulated like any other insurance company through the state of Kansas. And most of these are located offshore or in Tennessee or Vermont or other states that have friendly captive insurance laws. And there are tons of Kansas companies that have captive insurance companies, yet none of them are in the state of Kansas because we needed to make a few changes to bring that money back here, and it's a lot of money. So I recently had the privilege of working with the insurance commissioner to form the very first property and casualty company in the state of Kansas this last year. And for those of you that aren't aware, she was a big proponent of captive insurance companies when she was in the Senate, and she passed the very first captive laws. And now she has completed the first captive insurance company. Through the collaboration with her and the process that we went through, we came up with some of these changes that we thought would be beneficial to bring some of these captives back to Kansas and to help more people form their captive in Kansas. And just to kind of touch on a few of the key provisions of the bill, the protected cell captive, currently we have a captive insurance company, pure captive law. So a big company with all of its related businesses could form its own company and insure itself. A protected cell is more for a smaller business that wants to form a captive, and it allows it to form a captive alongside several others and share the expenses of the risk management and the accounting and auditing and actuarial services, and it significantly reduces the costs. And they're all protected from each other, so that if one of them ends up not making it, it doesn't affect the others. And by the way, if one of these companies were to fail, no one gets hurt other than the company that formed it, and they're self-insured anyway. It's just a different way to do and account for self-insurance. So with the protected cells, normally our surplus for a pure captive is $250,000 in addition to the reserves that are required to pay claims. Since these companies are smaller, that is $100,000 for the protected cell. We also allowed these businesses to insure controlled unaffiliated businesses. Controlled unaffiliated business is someone that would have a contract, maybe a franchise agreement or something like that, to put them all together and insure. Previously, we had limited that to 5%, and none of the other states limit that, and so that'll be advantageous. We also added workers' compensation and medical stop-loss coverage because they're becoming more popular in these other states. Provisional certificate of authority was added because the process was so long, and it required a lot on the insurance commissioner side and on our side. And we came all the way up against the window of, we had a 12/1 date to put this insurance together. And there are some other states that allow a provisional certificate to be issued while you work through the process so you can start accumulating your reserves. The application fee in the state of Kansas is $10,000 right now, and that is pretty much prohibitive, and that's probably one of the main reasons we don't have a whole lot of captive insurance companies. So we moved that to $2,500, and I know the insurance commissioner does a really good job of cutting fees and working on that, so we'll probably make a change on that to up to $2,500 because she likes to have the advantage to lower the fees if she can afford it. The financial review, moving it from 3 to 5 years, was just to put us in line with other states, and I would point out that the insurance commissioner still has the right to request an audit or a review at any time that she feels necessary. And then the captive exemptions. Normally, when the insurance commissioner reviews an insurance company for the state of Kansas, they have to go through a rating organization and a policy organization to file their rates nationally and their policy nationally. And that's not necessary because these captives are writing their own policies. Some of the benefits, and I've listed these out in my testimony, but there's a lot of cost savings in here. As an example, our insurance, the company that I work for that formed this captive, our loss ratio was very low every year. It was 10% this last year. We pay $1.5 million in premiums, and we got a 15% increase or 12% increase, even though our losses were $40,000 for the year. And that's just indicative of the marketplace right now. And I'm sure you guys have heard the complaints from your constituents that insurance is getting more and more expensive, and for businesses too. A lot of insurance companies are even backing out of the market, and so this is a good option for some of these companies. The cost control down the road, that extra dollars that we would capture in this business, if we continue to have zero losses or low losses, we can capture those funds and invest them and grow them and lower our premium a lot more going forward. And that's, so far it's working out, but knock on wood, right? And the stability that comes with a captive is important to mention because right now all these insurance companies are raising rates, backing out. There's a lot of areas in the country you can't even buy coverage. You just saw what happened in California. Anyone that has a captive with a business in California would be able to insure itself properly. And so that's one of the advantages. Let's see. I think I'll just stop right there because the other two conferees that are here to testify can go through a little bit more of the advantages, but in the interest of time, I will just, I'll stop right there and stand for questions, Mr. Chairman, if you have any.
All right. Representative Penn has a question for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative, for your testimony here today. Just a couple of quick questions. I had some constituents in my district that were talking about the cost of talking about the expense on premiums and policies going up. Would this apply could you see a world in which this works for churches as well for their insurance policies?
Typically, you need to have a lot of premium and exposure that's kind of spread out. I would say that if you had a group of churches, you could do a captive with the group of churches, or if you had several locations, certainly. A lot of churches use risk retention groups for the liability.
Thank you for that. And Mr. Chairman, if I may, is there a license that is required to create this captive?
Thank you for the question and giving me the opportunity to clarify that. Yes, there are no license requirements, just a certificate of authority that's issued by the insurance commissioner, like they would issue a certificate of authority for any insurance company to do business in the state.
Okay. And because of that, I'd like to talk to you about a recently passed out bill and see if there's any applicability to that or any issues that we had over in earlier committee. And then the last piece, Mr. Chairman, does this recognize other captive certificates of authority from other states? Is reciprocity across state lines, is that an issue or anything? And thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So there's no need for that because it's a self-insurance type of thing. The businesses that are located in Kansas that have captives in other states, they can still insure themselves here in Kansas, and we don't have any self-procurement tax, and so the state of Kansas gets $0 in that case. And the hopes with this bill would be it would bring that massive premium back to the state of Kansas so that we would get some premium tax on it. Thank you for the questions.
All right, Representative Neighbor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned offshore accounts. Where offshore? Because I know we've had a lot of discussion in the House about who we're working with, who we're not working with, and people have concerns about where that might be.
So there are several offshore domiciles for captive insurance companies. I know the Turks and Caicos is one, and I'm sure these other conferees will be able to give you more detail on that. However, I want to be clear that this would help bring, so if a Kansas company has a captive and it's offshore, this would help bring this back. Because, I mean, it's currently illegal to have a captive offshore. But this would help bring them back to the state of Kansas. And other states have seen the success there.
So some people that are going to be testifying after you might have a little bit longer list and better understanding of who these offshore accounts are.
Yes.
People are, I'm sorry.
Yes, that I would hope so and think so. I have experience with setting up captives in the Turks and Caicos in the past, set up for auto dealerships in their extended warranty products that we would reinsure with their captive that was offshore.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I think it's exciting that Kansas could be an offshore company, or offshore entity. I'm excited about the notion. We'll get a beach here one of these days. All right, any further questions for Representative Tarwater? Our first proponent, but this time it's not the only one. All right, very good. Thank you, sir. All right, now testimony has been coming in throughout the day here. So if things look a little bit jumbled on the agenda, that is just because things got a little bit crazy today. You'll see some written testimony. He's the next proponent listed from Andrew Weens from Kansas Employers Affordable Health Care, but he's not here, obviously. He's written only. Our next proponent is via WebEx. We have Kevin Doherty, past president and board member of Tennessee Captive Insurance Association. Yes, Representative Tarwater.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If it pleases you, I would like to introduce him and give a little bit of background.
That sounds fabulous. Do you have walk-up music too?
Well, so he's online, but he does have a fog machine right next to his camera, so he's going to cue that. Go ahead and cue your fog machine. And so Kevin Doherty is a friend of mine and former president of the Tennessee Captive Insurance Association. And Tennessee has a really large captive audience there. And he's currently a board member. And he has written all of the laws in the state of Tennessee, all the legislation, which have passed almost unanimously every time they make a change to it. And so I'm very pleased to have him here, and I appreciate you taking the time, sir.
I'm very glad to be here. Thank you, Representative Tarwater and Mr. Chairman, Representative Sutton. Good to see you guys again. Would you like me just to talk generally about the benefits of captive insurance law, or give you a little background perhaps on my experience and what I've done over the years.
That sounds fantastic. Absolutely.
Well, just so you know, I'm a lot, I'm a lot younger than I look, but I've been doing this for over 30 years in the captive insurance space, and I've worked in most of the domiciles in the United States, and I'm also familiar with many of the offshore domiciles. And I had the unique opportunity back in 2011, after having been involved for a long time, to draft the brand new law in Tennessee, which we got passed in the 2011 legislative session in Tennessee. And we brought Tennessee's law to be what we thought was the most cutting edge that it could be in the industry. And we've amended it about 5 times since then. That's another thing you have to do. You have to keep an eye on it and keep up with the changes that are being made. But captive insurance does a lot of interesting things for businesses. It allows them, number one, possibly to cover and provide insurance coverage for things that they can't find coverage for. Literally, the marketplace may not be offering that coverage, or the price may be too expensive for what you're trying to get. The captive is a great alternative for doing that. And the captive also, when you become a captive, when you have a captive, you automatically are admitted into the world of reinsurance. And reinsurance, by definition, is the insurance of an insurance company, and the captive is an insurance company. What that means is that instead of being limited only to what you can buy in your state, all of a sudden you can buy insurance anywhere in the world. And there's much less regulation at the reinsurance level. It's primarily only regulated on a solvency basis and not in other ways. But there are traditionally, captive insurance was something that only the largest companies did. So, and there weren't any opportunities in the United States, let's say 50 years ago, there were no states that had captive insurance laws. So all of the captives went offshore, and they went to places like Bermuda, Cayman Islands, Turks and Caicos, as Representative Tarwater mentioned, Barbados, and British Virgin Islands, and many other locations. What happened over the years was that there were amendments at the federal level on the tax laws, and captives, which had previously been a significant tax dodge for a lot of companies, they eliminated those benefits for going offshore. And at the same time, the domiciles in the United States decided we're going to try to bring this business back on shore. Tennessee and Colorado passed the first captive laws in 1978, and then Vermont passed a law in 1981. And Vermont really decided to become the leader in captive insurance. And they are today the leading state for captive insurance. A group of very smart business folks decided that if they go to Vermont, we can convince the legislature to do something very business friendly, and we can stay with it. And it's been a huge economic boon for the state of Vermont. And Vermont is a very small state, which doesn't have a lot of industry. So it's been a really significant piece of legislation for that state. After Vermont, Georgia passed the law in '88, and a few other states did, but nobody really did anything with the law. And in my written testimony, which I'm not sure if you all have seen that or not, but we talk about, and this is perhaps worth remembering, we talk about a so-called three-legged stool. In order to be successful as a captive domicile, you have to have 3 most important things. Number one, you have to have a good law. And so the legislature steps in first and drafts, hopefully, a law that's cutting edge and is going to bring the business to the state. Second, you have to have a strong executive, whether that's the governor or the insurance commissioner, whoever it is that's going to regulate the law, has to be qualified and willing to spend the time and expertise to do it. And then finally, you have to have a private sector, actuaries, attorneys, accountants, and what have you, who are available, captive managers, to actually run the captive insurance business. If you have those 3 strong legs of the stool, you can generally be very successful. And Tennessee in 2011, when we passed our law, it was hard work to get it passed the first time, but I will tell you that we had no, each vote was unanimous. Every committee vote and every floor vote was unanimous. It's not a partisan issue. It is pollution-free financial industry that you bring to the state, and it does great benefit to your companies that are based in your state, because most companies would rather have a regulator that they're familiar with and that is not too far away from where their company is headquartered, as opposed to, I mean, nothing against Vermont, but it's hard to travel there. And to go visit the regulators and deal with your company, it takes time and effort to do that. Tennessee has had a benefit. One of our greatest benefits in Tennessee is that we are very much in the center, the population center of the United States. So in terms of coming from other states to Tennessee, it's very easy for the most part to travel there. So that's helped grow Tennessee. And just to give you some numbers, in Tennessee at this point, we're looking at we've gotten up to $3 billion in annual premiums. We have a number of very large companies in addition to smaller companies who form their captives. So the premium volumes that are running through the state is pretty substantial. In terms of tax revenue, it's probably in the neighborhood, and don't quote me on this because I'm an outside attorney and don't have access to all the numbers that the department does, but I believe the tax revenue for the captive section is somewhere in the $3 to $4 million a year range, which is significantly more than what it costs to operate the captive division. So from a fiscal standpoint, it's a very strong department. It creates very good, high quality, white collar jobs for the most part. Most states require you to actually have a resident director or bricks and mortar offices in the state. You have advantages if you do those things. So it creates tourism dollars. If you have to have a meeting every year in the state, you got to have folks come in to actually attend the meeting. And we also have a conference every year. Last year's conference, we had about 275 people attend for several days. So that becomes a significant economic driver as well. And maybe, Representative Tarwater, I can stop there and see if there are any questions. I'm not sure if I've answered everyone's concerns.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Doherty. Our chair stepped out for just a second, but I'll stop and ask if anybody has any questions. Representative Tarwater.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kevin, thanks a lot again, for your time today and for your presentation. Can you touch on the rest of the industry? I mean, that many captives creates a lot of jobs in actuarials, lawyers,
right,
managers, and every company spends roughly $100,000 or more every year on professionals like that to run the company and just to do the audits. So can you touch kind of on that? Thanks.
On the professionals who are involved in the amount of money you spend, is that what you mean? I mean, for example, one of the greatest things about the captive laws, each captive, like every insurance company, there's a variety of expertise that the captive needs. And that's in the nature of attorneys, actuaries, accountants, bankers, brokers, all sorts of different folks, captive managers. So it provides, it's a job creation, but it's not, it's high quality or I shouldn't say high quality, that's the wrong word. It's high income jobs, white collar type jobs. It's not, the numbers of jobs are not significant, but the quality of the jobs is very high. And it brings in, a whole bunch of different opportunities, in particular for your companies that are currently, buying their insurance through captives that are located in other places. In Tennessee, just to give you some numbers, Tennessee has formed over 1,000 captives so far since 2011. That's either the captives themselves or one of the cells talking about the cell legislation. And there are currently about 500 of those that are active, about 170 captives and 300 and change cells. You know, the numbers in Vermont, just to provide another example, are significantly in excess of that. And I mentioned that Tennessee had about $3 billion in annual premiums coming through the state. Vermont has about 12 times that much. I think Vermont is somewhere in the range of $35 to $40 billion in premiums coming through the state. So we're talking very large numbers. Representative Tarwater, did I answer your question about the professionals?
Yes, thank you very much.
All right, next batter is Representative Penn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Mr. Kevin, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate you talking about the three legs on the stool. You talked about the officers, you talked about Vermont, Georgia, and Tennessee in the lineup of making this happen and the high-paying jobs that you have. And of course, there's going to be the ancillary jobs from service industry and marketing and homes and everything. How long does it take for that to ramp up inside of a state that you've seen on average?
That's a really excellent question. I can tell you, I can give you the example of Tennessee and we were fortunate because we have some very large public companies in Tennessee, all of whom, of course, had captives elsewhere in 2011. Even though actually, it's a long story, we actually had a law on the books, but it wasn't a good law. And the department wasn't promoting the law. So we didn't have three good legs of the stool. But I'm trying to think what the best way to answer that question is. Can you repeat your question again? I think I've lost my train of thought.
Thank you so very much. Just succinctly, because we do have some other things that I need to get to, but just how long does it take for these benefits?
I apologize. It's sort of like a snowball. In your first year, you'll probably get a handful of captives formed. If you're lucky, you'll get 5 or 6 in the first year. And in the second year, you'll have 10 or 15, and it'll move along at that pace. And it'll be frustrating in the beginning because, you know, you think it's the best thing in the world, but it takes time for people to absorb it. It takes time for companies to switch and, you know, move their captives. One of the things we did in Tennessee, we also provided an incentive to come into the state from offshore or other states. Most states have that built into the law. That may be something to consider at some point as well. You know, financial incentive for moving your captive back to Kansas. You know, you can potentially get to a very good place.
All right, excellent. All right, further questions for Mr. Doherty? This is the expert. This is your chance. Yes, Representative Wagner.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Doherty, so captive insurance companies, I mean, insurance companies, you know, do go belly up, you know, they misjudge the risk. I mean, how have captive insurance companies done? Do they have any like higher loss ratios than a normal insurance company, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's another excellent question. Well, the first thing to remember is that a captive is only covering the risks, in most cases, covering the risks only of the companies that own it. So when the captive does go belly up, the public is not harmed by that. And for that reason, captives are usually regulated slightly less than traditional companies would be.
Okay. If I could also ask, so I mean, the premium amounts are like very impressive. Again, I'm not that cognizant of the total premium market for insurance, but so basically, so if the captive insurance market is growing, it's basically taking market share away from existing insurance companies. Is that the basic math on it?
Maybe. maybe, but a lot of reasons for captives are coverages that don't exist in the marketplace, or coverages that, I mean, we've got obviously some unique new things that are happening these days, such as cyber risk insurance, artificial intelligence, and things like that. And the policies that are available in the traditional marketplace are not always fully formed and not always very accessible to smaller businesses. So the captive can sort of help you create your own policy. And in terms of, you asked also about loss ratios, I would say in general, the loss ratios in captives are lower. And one of the reasons for that is that when you start taking care of your own insurance business and it's your company, you tend to put things in place like loss control mechanisms and ways that you're not going to have, if you just buy an insurance policy and say, well, it doesn't matter, I'm covered, and you don't take any effort as a company to try to reduce the frequency of your losses, then your loss ratios can be higher. And you get to decide for yourself as a business, how am I going to do this? And you have to do it in accordance with insurance requirements, in accordance with actuarial standards. You can't just do it arbitrarily. But generally speaking, companies, when they have captives, are more careful about taking care of the risk that's involved in that, and the loss ratios tend to be a bit lower, as opposed to just throwing out an insurance to an entire industry.
All right, thank you.
All right, further questions? Seeing none. All right, Mr. Doherty, thanks for being here in spirit anyway.
Well, I appreciate it, guys. Have a great weekend, and I'm happy to answer any more questions at any time.
Very good, thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
All right, committee, the last proponent that I have listed is Ryan Ralston, president of Elevated Risk Solutions. There he is. I was making eye contact with the wrong guy there. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Oh, wait, one moment. I think Representative Tarwater would also like to provide your walk-up music.
Right, yeah. Yeah, so Ryan Ralston is a good friend of mine who he operates CEO of Elevate, and he is a captive manager. And he walked through the process with me in the state of Kansas with our insurance commissioner too, and he runs our captive. So he's the guy that understands it, the thick and thin. And man, he's got a lot of patience, I'll tell you that, because he has to deal with me all the time.
I'm appreciating that.
Second that.
Yeah. So welcome to the committee, and make sure your blue button's on, that light's on, okay.
Thank you, Chairman Sutton, Representative Tarwater, and the other members of the committee. I'm Ryan Ralston. My experience from captives is from the industry side. I started the Boeing company, where they let me take over their $300 million captive offshore in Bermuda. And so I cut my teeth learning on a very big captive. I came to Kansas back in '95 into Koch Industries. So I built a big captive for Koch Industries offshore in Bermuda. There wasn't good rules in Kansas to build it here. We looked at it and said, no, it's not going to fit in Kansas. Let's go somewhere else. I went to Whirlpool Corporation, became the director of risk management at Whirlpool. I built 2 captives for them, again, Vermont and offshore for various reasons. Came back to Kansas about 10 years ago with my family and built the largest group captive for the ethanol industry. And again, it was not in Kansas. We went to the Cayman Islands for that. In retrospect, we would have much rather have it in Kansas, but because most of the farmers, most of the ethanol plants were based here, Colorado, Nebraska. But again, the laws did not permit us to. It just was too prohibited. I now, for the last 4 years, am the president of a risk management company, risk management and captive management company. We're based in Oklahoma City, but I live in Wichita, Kansas. I would like to move my office from Oklahoma to Kansas, so I have some incentive here, but the laws just have not allowed us to build captives in Kansas. So I want to thank the Commissioner of Insurance and the Insurance Commissioner, whatever the name is at this moment, of the Department of Insurance. I'll use the future. They did a remarkable job with us, helping us understand the rules and the regulations and putting the first property and casualty captive together in Kansas. And I thank Representative Tarwater and Midwest Trust because they said, let's build one here, let's learn the regulations, and let's improve it. So what a great approach to take, and then go out and get expertise and come in and provide a way to change the program from within, not from outside throwing rocks. So I think people have already covered, I've provided some written testimony on the benefits of captive. I think you've heard that. I would echo all of those. I think the financial incentives are great for the state, but also for the companies in the state. And not just companies, but farmers. I've built multiple captives for farmers all outside of Kansas. And I had a farmer call me on the way here, no kidding, saying, can I open a captive for myself? I've got $500,000 of premium. I go, you're too small. Wait a minute, we're enacting some laws which might allow cell companies that could be something be more attractive for you to get into and use. So I'm excited to hear this change go in place. So the economic growth's been talked about. I'm also heavy into risk management. My career has led me where I've used captives not just for the financial benefit, but to implement risk management and incentives through a captive where instead of a company buying commercial insurance and throwing their risk over the fence and hoping it works over time, a captive allows you to self-insure, to take responsibility and ownership of the risk. The profits in the captive, therefore, can be used to go back and try to lessen that risk. So a lot of companies, Coke, Whirlpool, Garmin, companies that are big, are using their captives and the profits in their captives to refund and rebate back to the company to implement risk management approaches so people go home safe, so that we have safer products. And so you can see the other benefits you don't see up front in just developing the economy. It also helps companies and individuals in the long run. Captives are owned by every Fortune 500 company, but most of our customers now are mid-level companies. They're the $50 million to $1 billion company. Some $25 million companies are calling us saying, I want a captive insurance company. How do I do this? We turn a lot of them away. But this law would allow us to at least engage a few more of them and see if it's best for them. So I just like to keep business at home too. I'm very proud to have participated in building a captive in Kansas, and I'd like to do more of them because it's our home state, and I think that's good news. So I'm willing to entertain any questions, but thank you for the time allowing me to come up here.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Although I'm not sure why you would want to choose Kansas over Barbados. It's a tough call in my book, but nonetheless. Did you get to visit those locations, or was it just in paper only?
We can still do board meetings in the Cayman Islands. So we set it up in the Caymans that are board meetings down there, but you can have a captive in Kansas, do your quarterly board meetings here, and then if you want to go once a year to Cayman Islands or to Bermuda, go for it. We'll set it up and arrange it, but
there you go.
There's some places that it's a requirement, and that's where it's inconvenient because people are very busy and don't have time to spend a week off island every year.
Sure. All right. Committee question. Representative Penn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, because I don't understand this concept fully, and I might have to see it hands-on, I move that we take a committee field trip to go and investigate this.
Of course.
I think
field inspection, we call them. We'll just
field inspection, yes.
Yes.
Yes, yes.
I will address that with the speaker. I think you have a compelling case.
Amen to that. Well, thank you, sir, for being here today, and I appreciate your insights that you have. You talked about the refinance of the interest, and that would happen after you get the captives on the ground and the company grows it large enough in order to have that interest to refi and do that extra growth. To get there, though, it would take some type of incentive package. I think that's what Mr. Doherty was talking about before. What does that usually look like? What's the input from the state? How much skin do you see usually for these states that have captives to get into the game?
When you said, are you meaning, I'm not following your question exactly. Are you talking about how much capital is required to build a captive?
Yes, sir.
So there's fees and there's capital. So fees are usually, to build one, it's about $50,000. The state fee is usually less than $5,000. Here it's $10,000, which is kind of a showstopper. People don't get past that even. Once you put capital in, most requirements for a single parent captive, $250,000, a group, $500,000. But there's something called a cell structure. A cell is a group of companies that come together and you have a sponsor. The minimum capital for a cell structure is $100,000. That is a lot easier for some of the farmers or the middle companies to come up with and put at risk is $100,000 as their entry capital. But in addressing profits, it usually takes 3 or 4 years before you see a company get profits and able to come back and either dividend out or create incentive programs back to the owners.
All right, and just to clarify, that's not state spending. Okay, I just wanted to make sure. I was afraid that was what you were asking, and no, the state is not.
He gave me some information, but that was what I was asking.
Okay, very.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Right, and that number is 0, if I understand correctly. Is that right?
And when you say the state spending, the state, sorry, I'm going to clarify the question. The state would have to receive an application for insurance. They would have to test it, come up with certain standards that would have to, so there is some involvement with the insurance commissioner as they test it and make sure that the people running it have enough acuity to manage a captive and to own a captive.
Right, very good. Representative Wagner.
Again, just to clarify, I think, Mr. Chairman, you did, but there's no like financial incentive package that somehow we're supposed to kick in to make these things go. You just need the legal framework set up, and it just originates just from the need in the market for it.
Yes, that's a good question. Yeah, the state is not incentivizing anyone to build a captive. The companies are well incentivized to put a captive together. Most every company is having a 15–20% increase in their premiums, especially for auto liability, for property. We've seen these goes up year after year, and companies are getting upset, and they don't want to pay the insurance company anymore, so they want to pay themselves and build their own insurance company or group together with others and build a common insurance company that they can use. Someone asked about churches. I think Representative Penn had asked about churches. The Catholic Archdiocese is one of the biggest captives in the world. And we get calls all the time from different churches that would like to pull together. We've got one from Texas, a Presbyterian group would like to put a captive together. So there are many uses for captives.
Representative Tarwater.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to clear up the question on incentives. What Mr. Doherty did say that some states would incentivize captives to move back by allowing them to move their $1 billion worth of premium into the state without premium tax. And so they wouldn't have to pay the premium tax on the move, and even sometimes for a year or two. But that is not in this bill. We're not doing incentives. We're just making it easier to do business.
All right, excellent. Thank you. All right. Further questions for Mr. Ralston? All right. Well, thank you for being here.
All right. Thank you for asking me.
And I think we'll probably be reaching out with some questions here along the way.
Yeah, I'm available if you need me to come on the screen or just write something back. Let me know.
Perfect.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, committee, I have no other proponents listed. Would anyone care to speak as a proponent? Seeing none? All right. I have no one listed as neutral. I'm going to combine these because we're already past 5 o'clock. I have no one listed as neutral or opponent. Would anyone care to speak as neutral or opponent? Seeing none, I'll close both of those. Close the hearing on HB 2334. Now, committee 2335 has no in-person testimony whatsoever. So, Eileen, if you, you are here. I saw you there. I had you listed as written only, however. All right. Yep. Eileen, go ahead and get us up to speed on 2335. You can do it right from there. Hey, because I know you took your shoes off.
I did not.
You did too.
I swear they're not. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. House Bill 2335 would add maternity center to the definition of healthcare provider for purposes of the Healthcare Provider Insurance Availability Act. The bill amends KSA 40-3401 pertaining to the Healthcare Provider Insurance Availability Act. The amendment to the statute occurs on page 2 in lines 29 through 31 and adds maternity center to the definition of healthcare provider if the maternity center has been granted accreditation by the commissioner for accreditation of birth centers and is a maternity center as defined in KSA 65-503.
All right, committee, if this bill sounds familiar, I think this is the third time that we've heard it. Might be the fourth, but at least the third time that we've passed it out. Well, no, we've passed it out of here twice already. It got stuck somewhere on the floor, somewhere between the below the line, I think once, and I think on the way to the Senate the second time. So by golly, third time's a charm, and Representative Proctor is now it's just a grudge match. As proponent, however, we do have Kendra Wyatt here, so by all means, speak to us, Ms. Wyatt.
You all were talking about rats and cats and hyenas. This is a Labrador puppy dog that just needs to be passed, everybody. So my name's Kendra Wyatt. I'm the retired CEO of New Birth Company, which was a KDHE licensed and CABC accredited birthing center that ran from 2010 to 2024. And unfortunately, it closed last fall. And I would tell you due to too low care reimbursement. So that's a topic for another day. But over the history of our operations, we had 0 malpractice claims. The bill itself, this is the same bill. This is exactly the same bill. So this is the third time up. This is the 4th year that we have been here in order to get the language ideally passed by the bill. And otherwise, we've been in the budget is what has occurred. The fix itself is a puppy dog technical fix. Due to the unique historic nature of maternity centers, our statute nexus is the child care statute, not healthcare facilities. That has to do with the unique history of Kansas and the fact that women used to come in on the train and they would give birth and adopt out their babies. And that's why maternity centers are in child care, not in healthcare facilities where they belong. And so this fix simply just puts the word maternity center and allows us to gain access to the Healthcare Stabilization Fund, which we need, which is necessary. So I want to lift up a couple themes here and try to tie this together. Is that we too are trying to create a nascent economy called a wellness pregnancy economy is what we're trying to do with birth centers. And we have to have access to facility malpractice in order to contract with care. That's required. So this is a technical fix. It's not a mandate. It doesn't change the situation of the other parties. And it does open the door because it does require accreditation. It lowers the risk overall, meaning that the birth center or maternity center that would have access to the Healthcare Stabilization Fund would be operating at a higher level of quality than simple licensure. You might ask, well, Kendra, why do you care? Because you're not running a birth center anymore. I have been asked 3 times to open up a birth center in the state of Kansas in KCK across, in the urban core. I have met Amish communities from Thayer, Kansas, and on many of our underserved communities. And I would like to bring birth back to Leavenworth, Kansas, and our military families. The sidebar, I just want to mention that for the next 4 years, the state of Kansas will be partnering with the Trump administration on an initiative called Transforming Maternal Health. It is focused on increasing access to midwifery birth centers, more birth options in 31 counties in Kansas. And just lastly, I'm not going to give up. My great-grandmother was born in Quinter, Kansas in a sod dugout. These are my people. I gave birth to my children in Kansas in a birth center, and I just simply won't give up. So as long as I have Pat Proctor sponsoring the bill, I will be here getting this done. And then lastly, I just think there is hope that there is a companion Senate bill that would possibly make sense. I know Clark Schultz wanted to stay and speak to this. He needed to leave, but I'm here to answer any more of your questions.
All right, thank you for being here again. And I did, Clark did grab me in the hallway. He expressed his absolute support of this, but he had to run to another meeting that he had going on. Representative Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the year. I've got a feeling this is the year. Now, Kendra, thank you for being here today. We've got a lot of new members here on the Insurance Committee. So do you mind describing, because people may have a picture in their head, but like who are the providers and what does the facility look like? And
Sure.
what are the safeguards
Sure.
in place?
Yeah, sure. So a maternity center in the state of Kansas is a well-regulated healthcare facility. We are regulated, licensed by KDHE, so we carry a license just like a surgery center does. Or other hospitals. So so the building or the center itself, I want you to think about New Birth Company, for example, was in an office park. We were in Corporate Woods. Now, there are other centers that are home-like environments, and that is also appropriate. What is more appropriate, so it's not so much the building and the facility itself, even though those are regulated items. You can't just do this out of your hotel room. And I would argue that when we fail to pass positive environments for high-value birth centers to operate, what we do is we revert to that option. So we do revert to people doing things that are not regulated. So we had 3 birthing suites. We had hallways that you could pull a gurney down because you have to be able to transfer the person or a newborn isolate to the hospital. There is a list of equipment we have to have, which is, relatively speaking, exactly the same as a level 1 labor and delivery unit. You're talking about the same capability, just minus the ability to do a cesarean. The providers that are able to catch babies, if you will, in a birth center are 3: physicians, certified nurse midwives, which would be APRNs with full practice authority, who maybe have licensure with the Board of Nursing and the Board of Healing Arts, and then the birth center regulations also allow for certified professional midwives to deliver or catch babies in the birthing center, and that is the case of a birthing center that operates in Wichita. I will say, sidebar, is that we do not have licensed midwifery, so that's for those certified professional midwives in the state of Kansas, and we are one of the last states to have that. Iowa just passed midwife parity, and so not only do they have licensed midwifery, but they actually have insurance parity. And that is, again, we're talking about low scope, low risk deliveries are what we want to focus on. So succinctly, we're talking about Yoder, Kansas has a wonderful 3-bedroom, quote, house with office space and clinic space, and that allows them to have low risk and to serve their community, and then to have normalized transfer protocols so that they can go then to the hospital as required. It is a vital part of making America healthy again. It is a vital part of solving the rural health crisis and also healthcare disparities in the urban core.
All right, so you're not advocating the sod dugout. I thought that was on the table. I'm sorry.
I'm not, but I'm just telling you, Leela Bell shook. She's like, Kendra, you just keep fighting.
Heck yeah. All right, committee, any further questions? Yes, Representative Wagner.
No, I'm very glad you came. Our business is located just a mile outside of Yoder, Kansas, and so I know exactly what you're referencing as far as the birthing center there. And really, I've seen this bill come across, didn't know that much about it, and I think you made a very good case. So I think this time is the charm.
I know. Let's get it. Let's get it. Thank you.
Very good. All right, seeing no other questions, Thanks for sticking with us.
Okay, thanks, guys. You guys have been great. Thank you. And please reach out. I'm happy to talk to you about this topic.
All right, now, I said that Clark was fully in favor of this, and that's true on a personal level, but as far as his role as the Kansas Healthcare Stabilization Fund, he is neutral. He said, by all means, that's fine. You know, he's not advocating for or against in his professional capacity. So I wanted to make sure I clarified that, because yes, he's supportive on a personal level, but the Healthcare Stabilization Fund says, yeah, okay, sure, yes, no, you decide. That's their position. I have no one listed else as proponent, opponent, or neutral. Anybody wants to speak? Grab the mic. Yep, except for Representative Hawkins. All right, I see no other testimony being provided. Then I will close the hearing on HB 2335. Committee, I'm sorry? One more day. I would strongly recommend that you read the testimony provided to you on all three of these bills. There will be a quiz on Monday, but hopefully we can hammer through those and end the House portion of the session very quickly. I don't believe, like I said, I don't believe that the Senate has done nearly the work that we have, if I've been keeping track accurately. So we'll have some duplicate bills that we can hammer through, but we're coming into the end of the tunnel here. That's exactly right. All right, so until Monday, ladies and gentlemen, we are adjourned.